Are Washingtonians fleeing to Florida? And is Florida the right place for you to live versus Washington State? We're covering all of that and more in today's video. Now, I personally know at least 30 to 40 families that have moved to Florida over the last 2 years. It really ended up spiking after COVID with how the governor handled COVID over there versus the other states across the US. Now, is the Florida craze over or is it continuing? Well, according to the Census Bureau, Florida actually came in second for the state that the most amount of people moved to in 2023. To be precise, 365,000 new residents were gained by Florida, while Texas gained 473,400. So these are the two hottest states that everybody's been moving to, and today we're gonna break it apart. We're gonna say, hey, how does Florida compare to Washington State? And we're gonna be looking at a few different topics. First, we'll be looking at climate, then geography, tax, cost of living, and culture. Probably the top 5 things that people are concerned with when moving to a different state. Now let's start off right away with climate. Which state receives more rain per year in inches? I'm gonna give you like 5 seconds to guess. Washington or Florida? Time starts now.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You guessed it, Florida. I know, insane, right? I always thought it was Washington, but actually Florida receives more rain per year. Florida receives precisely 59.3 inches of rain per year, while Washington is at 38, which is the national average. Now, I will say this, in Washington, we definitely have longer, rainier seasons. The average sunny days in Washington is 152, while Florida sits at 248. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Florida, but I have been multiple times. In fact, we just came back from Florida a few weeks ago. And there's one thing I realized. It's definitely not a state that I would live in permanently just because of the heat. And we went at a great time of the year. You know, it was only right around the lower to mid 80s. I think at peak it reached 90. But every single resident that I talked to there, I always ask them this question. Hey, what do you hate the most about Florida? And guys, the answers were unanimous. They hate the hot summers. The rest of the year it's bearable. In winters it's cooler. Early part of April, which we went to April 20th. So April, May, March are perfect, but the summer months are absolutely hot. One of the guys I talked to, he actually worked at a CVS over there. Young kid, and I was chatting with him. He's like, I've been here all my life. He's probably 18 years old, and he's like, the summers are extremely hot, 104, 105, humid. June, July, and August are the hottest months. And he's like, we just tried to get out of Florida during those times. There was another lady I talked to when we were heading out of Walmart. She noticed I was driving my brother-in-law's truck, and she noticed our Washington plates. So we started talking about Washington because she's from Washington. But she said that she loves Florida except the summer months. She's like, in summer months we escape over to South Carolina or North Carolina where the temperatures are more bearable and kind of the climate is a little bit more like the Pacific Northwest. But I will tell you one thing, nothing beats the Pacific Northwest when it comes to greenery, because one of the things that I loved seeing when I flew back from Florida is how much green Washington State has. There it's more yellow, and of course you have the blue ocean and stuff like that. But when I flew back in, I was so happy. I ain't no tree hugger, but I was so happy to see my trees, okay? Because they got no evergreen trees over there. All you got is palm trees, and that's really about it. Now let's talk about the geography. One other thing I noticed in Florida was how flat it is. I mean, probably the only hill I saw there was an anthill. Just kidding. But for real, it is flat. Washington State, we have hills, we have mountains, we have the gorgeous Mount Rainier. I have a love-hate relationship. Really, the only thing I personally don't like about Washington, and I've said this before, is just when it gets gloomy, it tends to last a long time. Now, lately, we've had a bout of sunshine, and we've had sun all of last week and going into this week, and hopefully, please Jesus, let it continue for the next few weeks. Really looking forward to getting some sun in. And I love our weather over here. You know, we're talking high 60s, low 70s. You get an opportunity to work outside around the house without burning to a crisp. The other thing that I noticed, and this is outside of the topic of geography, but their water sucks. My brother-in-law, he has a well and on his property, and it's in a neighborhood, right? You can hook up to public water, which the bill ends up being one of the guys over there that he knows, hooked up to public water. Their bill on average was, I think he said $470 or $450 a month. It got to the point where he called the city after being hooked up, and he was wondering maybe there was a leak somewhere, but no, that's just it. Well, the water bill is expensive there. Now, I was in Sarasota, so I don't know how it is across the rest of the state, but I assume it's pretty similar. Now, again, if you have a well, your water might stink because of the sulfur, so you really need filtration systems and pumps, and even then, it could still, at least the water we had was kind of slimy, because there was softeners and it stank. Anyways, what we ended up doing was essentially buying every water bottle that Walmart had to offer, because after we showered, we would wash off with water bottles. I kid you not, that's what we were doing. We were washing off with water bottles. One time, I went to bathe in the pool because the pool water was better than the shower. So, if you like clean water, if you like fresh water, Washington State is the place to be. Now let's talk about natural disasters. Here's a fun fact for you. Washington State actually has more natural disasters since 1953 compared to Florida. When I always think of Florida, I think of hurricanes, floods, and the worst. Washington actually has more, and I think that has a bit to do with our fire season, because we do tend to have fires, wildlife fires, throughout the hot summer months. Although I feel like they have subsided over the last few years. I remember like back in 2020 was really bad. We had like ash on our cars. But overall, since then, you might just get a whiff of smoke and nothing else. So there's a little bit of my own personal perception here, right, on how I see things. Also, Florida recently experienced a hurricane. I have family and friends there where, hey, you know, their trees fences came down, and one of the family friends, they were holding in their slide door because it was like shuttering or whatever. It was moving a lot. Anyways,
it was bowing in.
Yeah, it was bowing in from the wind, which personally, if that was me, I would run, because something about glass, wind, and the slide door bowing in doesn't seem safe. But you know, that's just me. Now, when it comes to taxes, both Florida and Washington State are kind of similar, and I ain't no CPA, so consult your CPA, but they don't have personal income tax in either state. However, when we're jumping over to cost of living, here's one thing that really stood out for me. Florida has significantly higher home insurance with the risk of hurricanes over there. I know people over there that are paying, like my aunt, she lives in Sarasota, $3,300 per year. Here, if you have $1,200 per year, you know, $100 a month, that's kind of average. There, it's $3,200 per year. And that's not the first person I talked to where their home insurance is above $3,000 a month. Also, when we're talking about cost of living in general, one report found that on average, to live comfortably in Florida, you need $6,200 to be exact. Yeah, $6,200 per month, while in Washington, you need $7,224.70 to live comfortably here per month. So Washington does tend to have a higher cost of living. I was talking to my brother-in-law actually today, or yesterday it was. He's like, dude, I went to the Amish store and I got 3 bags of groceries for $30, 2 dozen eggs for $5. And while that's all good and well, you know, groceries may be cheaper over there depending where you source them, because I'm sure your Walmarts and your regular grocery stores are still the same. While that may be the case, I'm sure you can find local people here in Washington, farmers, to where you can pick up your produce from. And I always say Trader Joe's is a great way to go. We typically have 4 bags full of groceries from Trader Joe's and spend right around $80. So nothing too crazy, pretty manageable when it comes to grocery shopping here in Washington State. Now, when it comes to culture, Seattle has a more of a coffee scene, right? You have a lot of coffee. It's very tech-centered as well. You also have people really going out into the outdoors, right? We live in the great Pacific Northwest, and that's kind of the whole vibe of Washington, right? You have coffee, you have the Pacific Northwest, the great outdoors, and that's kind of what Washington, so to say, is centered around. In Florida, when it comes to vibes, right, you definitely have a lot more of a beachy vibe over there with the, warm beaches. Washington does have beaches, but they are cold. Bring your wetsuit. In the summers, cold. Winters, freezing. So when it comes to that scene, Florida definitely has us beat. But you know what? We have lakes. We have a lot of lakes and they are warm. You can go jet skiing, waterboarding, water skiing, whatever it is you want to do. Wakeboarding. Anyways, and Florida does have lakes too. We drove by some of them, but guess what they have in those lakes? Alligators, crocodiles, something I don't want to be a part of. I like going to lakes here where I can catch a fish, probably, I don't know, 15, 20 inches, and that's probably the biggest thing in that lake. Florida, it's a whole different stories. You always see those news articles and crazy things happening in Florida. And while it is a great place to vacation, I don't think I would live there when comparing Florida to Washington State. Now, maybe that will change for me in the future. Maybe, as I grow older, I know a lot of people who do move out to Florida, specifically Sarasota. It's like a retirement community. I know a lot of people in Washington, especially the empty nesters, they like to have second homes in Arizona and Florida to go there during the winter. The winters are very manageable there, very mild temperatures, in the 60s, sometimes in the, I think, high 50s, the locals, some of the local people told me. But maybe I'll do that, because I do like to vacation in Florida. But living there full time, probably not for me. And if it's not for you, guess what? Scan the QR code so you can set up a Zoom call with me one-on-one, and I'd be happy to help you make that smooth move over to Washington State. See you in the next one.